Hot Water History, episode 196, December 30th, day 364 of 2025. Richard, what's going on?
End of the year, gonna have a little bit of a year in review, and you've promised that the Oak Park segment is gonna be more spectacular than normal.
Ah,
No?
there's been some good ones.
Okay,
I would say middle of the pack on this one.
gotcha.
Middle of the pack, Oak
Gotcha.
Park.
Okay,
But let's get it started with a quote that you wanted to bring up before we talk about 2025.
sure. Sure. Thomas Beckett's feast day was just yesterday, and little post quote from him from Great Site Memento Mori, and you can follow him at Tempus Fugit 4016. From St. Thomas Becket, we know that no trust can be placed on princes, and that cursed is the man who placeth his reliance on an arm of flesh. Oh, man, did he know what he was speaking of even before he was killed by a bunch of Henry II's knights in Canterbury Cathedral. So there you go. And people say that there's no such thing as anarchism in Catholic tradition and heritage. We have a lot of that from just two Thomas saints from England. How about that? So there's Thomas Becket lending his perspective.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to do a year in review. A lot's happened this year. Even if you just go through the Hot Water History podcasts from
Mm.
January, I've got all of our episodes pulled up, and I want to do and I haven't shared any of these with you, by the way. So these are just going to be ins and outs
Innies and outies.
for 2025, innies and outies. What's in, what was out. Okay. And this one is from January 4th. This was our first episode of the year.
So when you mean, just for clarification, when you say what's innie versus outie or what's in versus out, you're saying for 2025
For
or
2020, for
2026?
what we found out was in or out in 2025. It will make more sense. The first
Oh,
example, right? The first
okay.
example, we'll start with out. Okay. Calling yourself libertarian.
Yes, that was out. Gone. But was it not gone earlier than that? It feels
No,
like,
no. I know it seems like it was, but you go back and it wasn't that long ago where you're doing the whole breakdown. I know that it was. So some of the things that
hmm,
I'm gonna bring up, you might say I was leaning this way in
sure.
years prior, especially for the outs. I was leaning this way in years prior, but now it's all out. You're
So it's
never going back.
officially out.
It's out.
Okay. Well, my commentary on that is it's so not just uncomfortable anymore, it's untenable to be a libertarian. And what I mean by that is not in the way that a Nick Fuentes who dabbled in libertarianism or someone along those lines who read a great deal of libertarian thought and then later eschewed it for a kind of statist Christian nationalism, as he might identify himself, but more so going the other way, an espousal of full anarchism is what's really consistent with what's going on in the world around us, looking back in with an objective view of history and understanding that there are no more there's no more wishy-washy language that can be associated with any conviction. The beneficences or the supposed altruism or public service of the state as an institution and the apparatchiks and bureaucrats who operate within it. And this goes for the institution as it exists and it operates throughout the world. So in the modern era, and for example, I think the Thomas Becket quote with which we started the episode is so appropriate because even back in the Middle Ages, in the High Middle Ages, when Becket lived, we're talking about him recognizing the sullen, decrepit, evil, nefarious nature of the state. and it resided in the person of the king by and large. And that form of government, as a monarchy, hereditary monarchy, dynastic monarchy, was still so minuscule and constrained by the natural and, might we dare say, lack of technological advancement that it was encumbered and thus restricted. And so when Beckett gives his life to ensure that the state cannot transgress against the church and her rights and her authorities vis-a-vis the individual believer and Christendom, well, think about what a man like Beckett or Dominic or Francis or any of the great contributors of the patristic and then medieval period on this question of power and authority, virtuous exercise of governance, let's call it, would say about the exigencies of the modern state, the crimes that are so manifest and so manifold and so innumerable and destructive that human liberty in its most basic exercises is in jeopardy or so constrained and curtailed that even imagining full deployment of human freedom and agency is hard for us to engage in. And we find ourselves at odds with people because they refuse to even engage that imagination that ought to be quite active and strong.
Nice. Are you ready for the first in?
Yes.
This one's a little more basic, but I'm going AI. This is the first full year I think it's become inevitable. I don't know how you feel about it. I'm pretty pro AI,
Yes.
especially with the just the efficiency it's going to create. I think it's going to be a lot like some of the aspects of COVID where it exposed and accelerated some aspects in our lives that we always kind of knew.
Yes.
And I think AI is going to have a similar effect.
Right. And when you incorporate it within the blockchain and the abilities of these technologies and I have to admit that a lot of my perspective on AI is very much informed by a mutual friend of ours who's very much working within AI in a field like engineering, for example, that the efficiencies that come with that will have the potential, they have the potential to root out a lot of waste and, yeah, just a lot of waste of time, treasure, energy that could otherwise be expended in, again, those imaginative things that are still reserved to the human spirit and mind. So that's why I'm very much, as you said, a proponent. I'm with you on that. Definitely an in.
Out. Pope Francis.
He gone. That's pretty morbid, but
No,
also
he is out.
right. He gone.
But a
He's
lot of it that comes with
the
Pope.
Pope. So the Francis effect, you think, or the Francis
I'm
spirit of
saying
Francis, or
at the beginning of the year, we were talking about him a lot. Now
oh
we're not talking about him a lot.
oh okay. Well, that's true. Although he lives on in Francis 2.0 in FTR Prevost, the anti-pope. So
And then in Owen Benjamin,
to be sure, well,
out.
we should comment on why Owen's in
Okay.
from your perspective
No, you
first.
go. You go first.
Well, first of all, he still remains one of the funniest people on earth, in large part because he has that same characteristic as the Trey Parkers and Matt Stones, i.e., the creators of South Park, of taking on any subject matter and making it humorous. So I would go so far as to say that Candace Owens has been pretty heroic in my estimation. I don't find her show to be terribly entertaining, but I do find that her resistance to the narrative, the official narrative of corporate media or Zionist wing and politicians of some prominence, has been pretty heroic. That she's going upstream while everyone's swimming, or desiring that everyone swim downstream. Uh, and yet Owen Benjamin found time to create a song about how George, whatever his name is, who married Candace Owens, like discovered Candace Owens in the jungles of Africa, and it was just I would suspect that if Candace Owens is the person I hope she is, she would have seen that and laughed hysterically. But who knows? So yeah, Owen, he just has a tremendous perspective and insight into I think a lot of just basic human nature, and he's able to really expound upon those insights to create with great hilarity.
I think he was put on Earth to make people laugh.
Yes, I
I
do. I
can't
agree.
imagine
Yeah,
him working another job,
correct. That's right. That's right.
and I respect that so much that he just keeps. I think he thinks that he has to do this, and I think he's
Yeah.
right. I think
Yeah.
he was put on Earth to make people laugh.
Yeah. I like that. I like that perspective.
Out, Donald Trump.
Oh, so far out. Not far out like in the 70s, meaning of it. He's he's obviously a Zionist, Jewish owned elite who happens to be also a feet who makes grandiose promises and does nothing to bring them to fruition, to, to actualize them. He's just a fraudster, right? So definitely out. Was he ever in our minds? No, but there was some hope that there'd be at least some retrenchment of populism along the lines of right-leaning concerns, drawback of governmental powers or influence and intrusion. But it's just then the spending is just so ridiculously absurd that the only curative measure now is a grand default coming down the road or a sovereign debt crisis. And isn't it sad that what was an obvious crime against humanity, making sure that the dollar alone in one country could determine the other world's the valuation or the relative valuation of the other world's currencies, and that it became the dominant trading and reserve currency on Earth from Bretton Woods, which is an immense privilege, yes, and what we as Americans might be able to obviously list the advantages and the positive effects of that outcome. Now we have to look at that as something that if the dollar reserve currency status is taken away, that might be the remediation that's ultimately needed.
In writing another book.
In. That's it. Yes, it's progressing slowly just because unlike any other book that I've written thus far or any work, I've thrown out sections that I've written so far because I just don't like them. And so I just trash them. So it's a plotting process. Whereas with Twisted History of the United States, I might have thrown out maybe 10 pages, 15 pages. I've probably thrown out 10 or 15 pages already in this book.
Mm,
So it's one step forward, two steps back in a way. But that's okay because I tend to like to write as I read in a very methodical way, try to comprehend everything and try to make sure I'm expressing it in the most um, both erudite and clear manner.
out, Erica Kirk.
Yeah, well, she was never in. I get what you're saying. She doesn't have to have an in status, but does anyone doubt that she's part of a rather grand conspiracy here to engage whatever her pursuits are, and they're certainly linked to the deep state of both Israel and the United States and probably other Western NGOs. Um, that she's a part of this grand conspiracy. I mean, it is shocking though how blatantly bad she is at this, right? I mean, say what you will about the Klaus Schwabs or the Yuval Hararis or the even think tech people like Peter Thiel's, yeah, of the world. They're at least somewhat good at this. I would even dare to say that someone who's as awkward as Bill Gates is better at the whole. revelation of the method than Erica Kirk is. She's just awful. Coming out with the gold pantsuit. I mean, can you think of someone who, in such short order of time, has gone from someone who you almost have to have universal respect or you're called to have universal respect for, and then the turn is so quick that she becomes such a reprehensible character and so loath. And in the era of social media and meme making, the number one target of funny memes. I mean, how many memes have you seen over the course of a month of everybody grieves in different waves,
Yeah,
in different ways? And there's Erica during doing backflips like Simone Biles. So
big time out. Another
big time.
in. We did a whole episode. HL Mencken.
He's always in. He's always been in. Just as a social critic and observer and intellectual of great esteem and repute, and his observations are spot on. Truth tellers are scoundrels. At least they're painted as such. But it's both a moniker and a weight that the righteous take on, and it's best to have it anyway, come what may.
And then I think I had one more out from later in the year. Oh,
Apparently, long dead time on podcast is in.
yeah, we can edit that. But out. This is kind of a double negative.
Yeah.
Being working for this working for CPS and not going on an exorbitant
We can't
vacation
even get it.
with COVID money.
What?
Do you remember that?
Say that again?
The vacations the CPS employees all took during
Oh,
COVID.
yeah, yeah.
So I was kind of
Right.
double negative.
So is that in or out?
That's out. Out
Okay.
is staying in Chicago during COVID,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true.
where they spent 26.3 million.
Camel Education. If you're looking for the episode on that, was Camel Education, where, of course, while the kids are masked up and some of the supposedly random ones are chosen to go to Tunisia with their teachers on all expense paid trips.
Yeah.
All of the rest of you must languish in Hegwish and Lawndale and go to failing schools that are crumbling with teachers and administrators, more administrators than most, who simply couldn't care less about your plight or education. Welcome to Chicago
Yeah, we're going
or
to
Tunis,
Vegas.
wherever you happen to be.
Did I miss any?
Let me think about that for a moment. Kind of hit me. I wasn't thinking about what we're. Uh, I don't know. I mean, was Pope Leo ever in or out, or should we? You know,
Well, he's definitely in as Pope.
yes. Well, no, he's not. Not in my perspective. From my perspective,
Okay.
you can't be a pope and a heretic. So
The Kennedy Hall episode was this year. That feels
that was
like
early. That must have been early.
January. That feels like super long ago.
Yeah, we have to have Kennedy back on because I finished his great treatise on what happened in the Catholic Church. So, and I have to admit that that was one of those books that I took a very long time to read. It's not that great in length, but it is very dense. In terms of creative ideas, it does flow, and you can read it because he's such a great writer with some speed. But it was one of those things where I did it because I didn't want it to end, so I
Hmm.
delayed uh, picking it up again. So I wanted to just relish it and enjoy it for as long as I could. Also look forward to something to read, and that was the case. He's Kenny's really a great contributor to defending the church's doctrine, its tradition, and its heritage against the attacks of modernism. And it's only with that book that I came to understand fully just how indeed modernism is the synthesis of all previous heresies and probably future heresies, just wrapped up into one disgusting bubble or bundle, and then it manifests itself and that is the religion of the ape church, and the more that we can rebel and fight against it, the better off we'll be, and the greater sanctity we will achieve. I will say that after reading that book too, I'm just more and more troubled. I had to just a side note, an anecdote. I had to attend a funeral mass at a very, let's call it sloppy Novus Ordo parish, that one that's obviously dying. And it's just all I kept thinking about was this is this doesn't even strike me as Catholic anymore. Like, is this even a Catholic celebration? Because it's so divorced from and devoid of the rites, the symbolism, the sacramentals, the essence of the old mass. And then what I would, I hope someone, maybe it's someone has, if we look at the, various, the 23 other churches that are rightly called Catholic, whether it's the Bulgarian Greek rite or whatever it is, how dissimilar is the Novus Ordo from that rite? How dissimilar is it from the Byzantine Catholic rite or the Marianite? Now, I've been to a Marianite. I haven't been to a Coptic. I actually been to a Coptic Orthodox church, but I've never been to a Coptic Catholic church and celebration of the Eucharist or any other sacrament. How different is it? How divorced is the Novus Ordo from the Syro-Malabar rite? I mean, all of these things are the Melkite. So that's because it's just not the Roman rite anymore. And just how vapid and empty the language is, the diction and the even the rubrics of what the priest is doing, and all the strange emphases on lay participation in the mystery. It's like I just don't get it. I mean I get what the modernists are trying to do. Why they thought it was attractive is the only thing that I could say is that they just weren't Catholic and they didn't like being Catholic. So when Yves Congar and Hans von Balthasar and Karl Rahner and Edward Skillebeck were destroying the church through all of these methods, they did a number on it, and what was left were the sort of scraps. It wasn't the richness of the church that was left after Vatican II. So I that was lamentable.
We did an episode called Tariff D's Nuts, where we talked about
Oh,
US
Tariff,
aid.
these nuts. I think you said Tariq. Tariq, these nuts.
Tariff
I'm like, who's
D's
Tariq?
Nuts.
Tariq
We,
Aziz?
we talked about US aid, which feels like a while ago, but
USAID, yeah.
yeah, February,
So long ago that we were celebrating that a government agency was being defunded.
right?
That's not happening anymore. They're just creating new ones.
Sniff. What was Sniff about? Ukraine? Was it
Wasn't it?
the artist?
Oh yeah, that was Bob Moran.
Bob Moran's,
And
that's what it was.
yes.
We broke
So,
down that. Dark Notes in first Dark Notes episodes.
uh-huh. Like that. We can have more Dark Notes episodes. I did finish watching Cheers.
Oh,
At-
okay.
I think that everyone should consider the watching the Gauntlet. It is going to take you a long, long time. There are 20 plus episodes a season for 11 seasons. It's a lot of episodes, but I liked it in the end. It was good entertainment, good solid entertainment. And there's a good message at the end too, I think.
Out our boy Ravi, unfortunately. Kinda.
Ravi Paragat,
Yeah.
he was barely hanging in.
In Iran.
Oh, Iran. Yeah, we were talking this about this a little bit before the show started, but there's a great new movement abroad. MIGA, make Iran great again. And what I will say is that the young woman, I don't know who it was on Twitter, but she created this little video. And she broke down all of the advantages that would necessarily come forth and proceed from having a alliance, which is much more natural to us actually, given that it's a great multi-millennial civilization like the Persians to ally with Iran rather than ally with Israel. What would we get out of an alliance with Iran? Well, we get a lot, as it turns out, a country with actual natural resources, right? Um, Vastly more greater expanse of land and resources and people with whom to celebrate, and a people that's literally biblical. They're descendants of a biblical nation, not fakers who are Ashkenazi Jews from Poland who have and in Newark, New Jersey, who have taken land and recolonized from the Palestinians. Um, so, and we get a culture that the Iranians, and these reports are all over the place if you just scratch the surface behind the Zionist media complex, and that is Iranians seem to be extraordinarily respectful of Christianity, whether it's the immense Armenian population there, or Assyrian Christians, or you name it, including Roman Catholics in Iran. And we even covered in that one episode that just outside of the new terminal of the subway system in Iran, located near St. Mary's Church, is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Good luck having that in Tel Aviv or in Haifa, right? There's not going to be a bus station in Haifa dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The Israeli state will never allow that. So Iran's in. I think Iran should always be in. It's a far superior civilization and culture. It's not even close. Whether we're talking about intellectual, cultural, historical heritage, or what they can, or even just what they can do now. In my article about the Iranian bourse at Kish, the island, I mean, Iran could be a great, even tourist, should be a tourist destination for Americans. I mean, and imagine if we didn't, instead of sanctioning them and trying to engage in ruination of their economy, right? Instead, we engage in free trade with Iran. I mean, their economy does okay and gets by despite being shut off at our bequest, right? At our request, excuse me, from the rest of the developed world. So it has to rely on Russia and China. What if we all just simply traded with the Iranians, right? I mean, think about how we would all flourish as a result. So one of these days I'm gonna go there. One of these days I'll go there. I hope. Mullahs, if you're listening, I'm ready to travel.
You might not come back.
Yeah, that's right. They call me Ishifan Gary. I've traded Chicago for Ishifan.
Anything
Or
else?
Tehran. No, nothing else comes to mind, Charlie.
Let's talk about a town that's always out.
That's right. Let's do it.
Been
Here it
out for
is.
years.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
Should we go to your gay suburb now?
The People segment. Meanwhile in Oak Park, brought to you by Trinity Brewing. In Trinity Brewing. First story, a bit of a recap from the Wednesday Journal. The challenges that defined Oak Park in 2025.
Retardation. Incurable. Retardation.
Midway blitz, funding threats, and
It
big
was the
time
same in
projects
2024.
made for
Sorry.
a historic year in Oak Park. This was the No Kings rally in Scoville Park
Look at the youth.
in
Look at the youth
March
getting involved.
on Lake Street on Saturday, June 14th,
That's
2025.
youth if you're 1,000.
Wow. There is nobody under the age of 40 in this picture.
Oh, it's not even 40. There's no one under the age of 60 in that photo. We're talking about hundreds of people there. They put the boom and boomers on that street.
Wow. What a year it's been. Oak Park faced a bevy of political challenges in 2025 as national and regional crises played out time and again inside played out time and again inside village limits. Oak Park's ethos as a progressive, welcoming village has been put to the test, as have the ambitions of the village's leaders. This is by no means an exhaustive list of memorable moments in this memorable year for Oak Park News, but it should serve as a moment for reflection to examine the trials of this year in preparation for what looks certain to be a busy 2026. This is an ICE arrest on October 28th. ICE in the village. Federal immigration agents' presence in Oak Park and its neighboring communities presented the greatest challenge to community leaders this year. For weeks at a time, Oak Park residents found themselves glued to cell phone videos showing masked federal agents making arrests in the shadows of the old growth trees that line Oak Park's quiet residential streets. But those Oak Park scenes represented just a fraction of the impact that ramped up immigration operations had on the Chicagoland region this year, as the dockets of federal district courts were quickly enveloped by challenges to the legality of immigration agency actions.
It's amazing how whenever the work of the feds is contrary to supposed Oak Park values, i.e., progressivism, they make Oak Park sound like Mayberry. But when the federal government is involved in funding all of its disastrous policies and making it the progressive village that it has to be, well, then it's just it's an urban, sophisticated metropolitan area. Yeah, that's in need of all of that funding. So it's interesting how they quickly turn in regarding self-identification.
President Donald Trump's ongoing Operation Midway Blitz has promised to rid Chicagoland of dangerous criminals in the country illegally, but it's been wildly unpopular among Oak Park's overwhelmingly liberal citizenry,
Who love criminals.
some of whom readily took to carrying plastic warning whistles and tailing immigration enforcement vans as they drove through town.
Could you imagine the immigrants like, oh, put the whistles down. Oh, the white women are out again.
The village's elected leaders also didn't flinch while calling the operation a fascist power grab, spreading fear and violating constitutional rights.
What exactly does that mean?
Quote, I'm here to unequivocally state that ICE is the aggressor, said Oak Park Village President Vicky Skaman at a press conference in October. There is no emergency here. We do not need ICE or the National Guard. What I need from our federal government as a municipal village president is
Is dollars, is
dollars.
money. I don't
Is
need actually enforcement of the law because we're in some sort of federal union, but we just need more money from you. No questions asked.
dollars for housing, mental health, physical health, support for transgender individuals, school programs, and food.
Of course, they need food because you're not supposed to be able to provide that for yourself or your family.
The Oak Park Village Board voted to abruptly cancel its contract with license plate reader provider Flock Safety over ICE and Border Patrol's access to surveillance data. In the fall, ICE and Border Patrol agents were regularly spotted throughout the Oak Park area. Wednesday Journal reported on ICE questioning a caregiver outside of the Wonderworks Children's Museum, ICE's arrest of a laborer near Whittier Elementary during the school's morning drop-off, a blitz of ICE activity through the village on Saturday, November 8th, and many other instances. ICE and Border Patrol's Chicago detainees were usually brought to a detention facility in nearby Broadview, which became the site of near constant protests and allegations of poor treatment.
Except, of course, when the weather's not good.
Those protests have resulted in arrests for a growing number of Oak Parkers, including a few elected leaders. I didn't even know that happened. Here we go. Oak Park Township trustee Juan Munoz was arrested at a protest at the detention facility on October 4th. Oak Park Village trustee Brian Straw was charged alongside several other progressive area politicians in an ongoing federal conspiracy case tied to a protest at the facility in September. At another protest, federal agents arrested Oak Parker Paul Ivory, an OPRF cafeteria worker who lives with a serious intellectual disability, on assault charges. The
Mm.
government dropped the charges against Ivory after reviewing records related to his disability, but not before keeping him in custody for several days at the Federal Bureau of Prisons Metropolitan Correctional Center and seeking to impose parole conditions that would have banned him from interacting with students at his job.
Okay.
Ivory had walked from his Oak Park home to the Broadview protest to show support for local law enforcement officers he felt had been disrespected by ICE agents.
Well, this is weird. He's smart enough to get there, but he has a severe intellectual disability.
Judge Gabriel A. Fuentes read a letter of support Skaman penned for Ivory into the record. It included comments from Oak Park Police Chief Shatonia Johnson that painted Ivory as one of the OPPD's most loyal supporters. Quote, our officers know him as the kid who stops and salutes when he sees them on the street, the letter said. Paul contributes to all that makes Oak Park special. He's a beloved member of our community.
So you're using him as a pawn to protest ICE because he supposedly likes local law enforcement? Poor kid's confused.
This story is sure to continue its relevance in 2026, with Border Patrol Chief Greg Bavino making an appearance on Harlem Avenue just last week. This is the best. This is the picture of the year. Lining
Yeah,
up
and
to
what
vote early outside Oak Park Village Hall. Ugly building,
ugly people.
ugly weather.
Yes. Slaves to the regime. There they are.
Police station plays. Village leaders spent much of 2025 gearing up for a generational facilities project, building the OPPD a new police station and renovating Oak Park Village Hall. The village has recognized that its police force has needed a new space for over a decade at this point, as the OPPD has continued to operate out of Village Hall's basement. The out-of-step facility is regularly cited as a hindrance to the department's officer recruiting efforts.
That's the reason. It's the facility, not the fact that the local politicians don't care to back the police in any way, shape, or form. That's fantastic.
Over the years, the police station conversations gave way to an acknowledgement that Village Hall itself, a terminally funky architectural tribute to quote open government, also needed an overhaul to function as a modern municipal office building.
Yeah, let's not even feign to be open government anymore. I mean, come on, who's buying that?
The idea was that the OPPD would get a new standalone building on the village-owned green space just south of Village Hall, while Village Hall would undergo significant renovations aimed at improving accessibility and functionality. The municipal campus project became one of the most obvious points of contention in Oak Park's 2025 village president's election between incumbent Vicky Skaman and trustee Robbie Paracott. While the two agreed on the need for a new police station, Paracott slammed the village hall renovations as expensive and unnecessary. Quote, I'm not talking about the police facility. That is absolutely required, Paracott said at a Wednesday Journal candidate forum in February. The Village Hall is a facility where the average Oak Parker spends less than 5 minutes a year. To spend $150 million on that, and $150 million is just a conservative estimate. By the time you look at financing costs, interest, location, or the logistical shifts required to move people to a new location and bring them back, it is going to push close to $200 million, and we don't have a good handle on that. To sit here in 2025 and not have a handle on that and not know how it's going to impact our residents, that's poor governance. Skaman said that Paracott was misleading the voters about the ultimate cost of the project, maintaining that the cost wouldn't come anywhere near the $200 million that he referenced in speeches and campaign materials.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we recently do a thing that said it was going to be 220? I remember that figure that we had just looked at, something that even there, and they delayed the vote until the new year. I'm not, I could be, correct me if I'm wrong, but that number stands out.
I wish I remembered the specifics, but I do remember seeing it over 200 when
Hmm.
you include the financing, which is what Robbie was bringing up, but I don't remember. Putting out this false information is truly not how you want your village president to operate, Skaman said at the Wednesday Journal Forum. Skaman ultimately secured a comfortable re-election victory on April 1st, but news on the future of the police station and village hall projects came slowly. Multiple dates for a village board discussion on the project appeared on agenda calendars, then never materialized. It wasn't until November when the board openly discussed the project again in a conversation that represented a major shift in the potential shape of the project. Rather than building a brand new police station, the village was now angling to buy the US Bank building that had been put up for sale a few blocks away from Village Hall on Madison Street, with the plan to convert it into a police station. In that meeting, the board approved the potential use of eminent domain to acquire the
Ah,
building if necessary.
how funny.
At another meeting a few weeks later, the board voted to officially endorse the US Bank plan as its preferred way forward for the police station project. The village has not reached an agreement to put the branch under village ownership, and Oak Park leaders will spend much of 2026 looking to put these plans into action. Funding threats. Federal budget cuts also presented significant challenges in Oak Park. In May, Oak Park was included on a U.S. Department of Homeland Security list of immigration sanctuary cities that were said to be set to lose access to federal grant money due to having local policies against complying with federal immigration agents. The village's inclusion on that list followed warnings by Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy that cities with sanctuary policies would lose out on federal infrastructure funding. Oak Park leaders responded to the funding threats in a statement. Quote, every resident, regardless of immigration status, is entitled to access village services without fear of deportation or other immigration related consequences, local
Think
officials
about
said.
that. Think about how absurd that is. That anyone, just by virtue of being in Oak Park, is entitled by right to access village services. Just stop there. That's ridiculous. That's just, that's so absurd. It's like saying that because you're in a Jewel Osco, you have the right to what? A loaf of bread? I mean, to access services. What does that mean? It just means stealing from one person and giving it to someone who's not even supposed to legally be here and is not contributing really anything to it. Anyway,
The village will continue to uphold the principle of confidentiality for residents and ensure that any personal information shared with the village is not disclosed to federal immigration enforcement agencies, except in cases where disclosure is mandated by law.
well, aren't that's such a the latter clause in that statement invalidates the first claim. We had seen that before, that type of language. We're standing tough, but if the law says we have to comply, we have to comply. I mean, especially if it means federal dollars, right? So this is all just posturing.
While those public sector funding threats have yet to materialize, as was
Mm.
once feared by village leaders, the impact of federal spending cuts have been felt sharply by Oak Park's nonprofits. Housing Forward, the main homelessness services provider in Cook County's western suburbs, felt the impact of the Trump presidency throughout the year as the new administrations brought ideological changes to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Those changes included billions in proposed cuts to national housing assistance programs,
It's all proposed. They're
with the
so fearful of Trump.
administration,
Doesn't actually do any of this.
right, with the administration seeking a 43% decrease in funding for federal rent assistance that serves 9 million Americans. Shortly before the end of the year, HUD leaders told Housing Forward and its peer organizations that it would put a hard cap on how much grant money could be spent on long-term housing.
Oh, they're really cutting there. Hard cap on how much spending we're going to dole out,
Long-term
which is
housing
going to
is the
be
organization's main way of supporting people experiencing chronic homelessness, according to Housing Forward CEO Linda Schuler. Quote, it's not just a loss of funding, it's also a loss of permanent supportive housing as our answer and as a demonstrated and proven solution to end homelessness, Schuler said.
wait. The proven solution is to provide permanent supportive housing.
Yeah,
That's the solution? No. So you're just going to keep people in houses on the federal dole forever. That's your solution.
it's proven.
It's proven.
This is a really hard pill to swallow right now. The caps were ultimately not put in place following legal challenges and resistance from emergency housing providers. Beyond Hunger, the area's premier food service agency, said it served more clients than it had ever before amid panic. Before amid panic? It had
Uh,
ever before amid panic caused by the administration's plans to halt SNAP benefits during the government shutdown. The agency provided food to over 1,200 individuals during the first weekend in November, the most it had ever served in one weekend in its nearly 50 years of existence, according to Beyond Hunger CEO Jenny Hall.
if it's so fantastic, then have it be privately funded.
Quote, in my many years working in the food insecurity field, I have never been more concerned about families struggling with hunger, she said. Food is not something families can wait out. Our neighbors who depend on SNAP to afford groceries each month will see their benefits disappear quickly and completely. For some, that will happen within days. Facing heightened food insecurity, especially during the holidays, is an unfathomable situation that will become a reality for many. In at least one case, The funding cuts put a wrench into work Oak Parkers were doing to help people on the other side of the globe. The blanket freeze that Trump and his then ally Elon Musk put on USAID funding killed a contract that Oak Park-based nonprofit Women's Global Education Project had signed to run a library and computer center in rural Kenya. The agency had just opened up the facility before learning through a memo that the project would no longer receive funding support, according to agency leader Amy Maglio. Women's Global does not want to have to close the doors of our newly built and equipped library and computer center. It provides access to books and technology to over 10,000 community members and is the only one of its kind in the whole county, Maglio told Wednesday Journal.
Wouldn't that be
Without,
country?
I think they meant country. That
Yeah,
would be a lot more impressive, right?
right.
Without WGP's USAID funded, that's the actual
So
acronym.
our federal government has to give money to a local group in Oak Park to then send it over to Kenya.
Yeah.
That's not a charity. It's a money laundering scheme. It's extortion. I mean, what is that? I mean, if it's again so utterly important and convincing that people should do this, then raise the money privately. Anyway, go ahead.
Without WGP's USAID funded program, a generation of students will be illiterate, are
That's
likely to
yeah.
drop out of school, girls will undergo FGM, become mothers in their early teens, and the cycle of poverty continues.
All because they don't have this little room with a book with books in it. That's the cause of female genital mutilation going on in Kenya. I didn't even know female genital mutilation was going on in Kenya. That was more of a North African Sudanese kind of problem. But okay.
According to agency publications, the library has survived the impact of the USAID freeze through donation.
Oh, how about that? So after all, it wasn't so dependent upon government funds, as none of this should be, because it's stealing. It's just stealing on a variety. It's just redounding stealing upon redounding stealing. So,
That's how you know it's stealing when it could survive without.
of course,
How do you survive without?
yeah, by actual voluntary contributions, which are not stealing. Okay.
That's Oak Park 2025 in a review. We've got one last letter to the editor for the year. By the way,
By Louisa Mezzatesta,
in another in letters to the
maybe.
editor.
Oh yeah, in
Letters
for
to the
sure.
editor, an opinion
Yeah.
in the Wednesday Journal.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm. Yes.
by Luis Mezzatesta. Just a note. Oh, this is thanks for brightening my day. Just a note to say how much I enjoyed Ken Trainor's column about God who may or may not exist. Ken, you have outdone yourself with this column. The E. E. Cummings prayer poem was a lovely touch as well. Let me explain. I made the mistake of reading the front section of the Trib today, something I usually avoid. I was busy yelling at the paper when I put it down and picked up the December 10th issue of Wednesday Journal. I read the front page article about Housing Forward getting screwed over by the immoral crooks in Washington and started yelling at the Journal. As I flipped through looking for some glimmer of hope, some bright spot in the muck, there was Ken's column. I got about 2 lines in and started to smile, which was followed shortly by chuckling and more smiles, nodding in agreement. By the time I got to the 2001 A Space Odyssey reference, I broke out in an honest to goodness belly laugh. The E. E. Cummings poem was the perfect ending. Thanks, Ken. You have a way with words, and you made my day a little brighter. God knows, in parentheses, who may or may not exist. We could all use a bit of brightening up.
Well, Louise, I'm sorry, but the God who does exist is, with that attitude, going to condemn you to hell, and then you're gonna. So hope you enjoy your bright day.
I hope that article was really good, I hope. Oh,
I hope
yeah.
it has a long-lasting effect. Mhm. As you eat dust for the rest of eternity.
Well, that's the segment.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay?
That's it. Boom.
Done with the year for Meanwhile in Oak Park.
Yeah. hmm So there you go. What will 2026 bring? What do you think? Should we throw out a prediction?
No,
Can you come up with one? No? No,
you
nothing?
can't even make it with that tongue. Can't even make predictions.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. I haven't really thought about it, so I'm not even gonna say. 2026, I will finish that book. No matter how
Okay.
many pages I delete,
Mm,
that book will be finished. I can't say it'll be published, but it'll be finished by 20 at the end of 2026. And I'm looking forward to the release of Mel Gibson's The Resurrection
that's gonna be
in
great.
Lent of 2026. So that should be huge. So interested to see what the ape church representatives in the Vatican say and the various homosexual bishops in the United States and beyond say about Mel Gibson's take on the resurrection. It's terrible. It's dripping with Catholicism, which we're not in favor of. It's truly not representative of who we are as a communion and a people. So,
Anything else?
well, I guess I'll see you on the other side of 2025 into 2026, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, keep it real,
Exciting.
Charlie.
All right, you too. Thanks to everyone who's listened to us throughout the
Yes,
whole
thank you
year.
for your support, kindness, consideration, and hopefully we've given you a lot of things to think about and some laughs along the way.
I've got one last prediction
Okay.
from our sponsor. Not
Oh,
from our sponsor, but about our sponsor.
uh-huh.
Trinity Brewing, Illinois, 2026.
Yeah, and beyond.
It's coming home.
Let's get all the Midwestern states at the least, you know, by
We're
2020,
we're
end of
coming home in
2026.
26.
Let's hope so. That'd be great. That'd be great. So, all right. Well, I'll see you on the flip side.
Take care, everyone. God bless.
Bye.